Welcome to the Mentoring Moments, Empowering Leaders to Mentor Our Future podcast. I am Dr. RobWottawa and believe that through teacher and leader mentorship, we can impact our future through our influences on students. As much as we believe in the power and impact of mentorship, many shy away from this rewarding work. The goal of these episodes is to lean into the work with teachers and leaders, hear their stories, and have fun with the mentoring process. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode where I am going to reflect on the 4 episodes with Darrin, Lauren, Ellen, and Brandon. I have a little bit of a script here, so I'm going to read some things. I'm going to reflect on some things and share some thoughts and ideas that I had over the last couple of weeks. And I'm super excited to have launched this podcast and have so many listeners be part of the process with me. I've gotten text messages and emails and a lot of wonderful messages. So I want to thank everyone for all of their support and all the questions that were submitted. I really, really do appreciate it. So here's my script, all right? So, okay, let's get real. When I sat down with Darrin, Lauren, Ellen, and Brandon, I thought I was just hosting conversations with these amazing people. It turns out I was unloading and loading up my plate, right, with the most incredible leadership buffet that was imaginable. And that's taking it from Lauren's episode. These things got me thinking, especially about how we can triage the daily noise from the real work that we do every single day, building those relationships. So today, I'm going to pull back the curtain on myself, on my own playback, on my own playbook, and I'm going to talk about the buffet philosophy that Lauren kind of touched upon, and some things that I want to talk about more, and how we can handle what I call the warning bell people in our daily lives, and how Brandon Beck talks about daily wins and celebrating those. And Ellen and I really talked about how we can talk about the level of influence with our students and with our teachers. So let's dive right into this kind of thought process. And, the first thing I want to unpack is the first year teacher advice, right? So a lot of things that I hear over the years, or college professors or teachers come to me during my first meeting. So the first meeting I have with teachers is usually in the summer after their approval. And I sit with them and I just ask them, what questions do you have? And a lot of them ask me questions about, how do I get my email account? How do I, set up my direct deposit? Questions like that that are really important to them. And then they ask instruction questions. What do the curriculum maps look like? What is the lesson plan format? And over the years, I've kind of crafted a basic format because our new teachers come from college with these 17 bulleted lesson plans that are 10 pages long. And we know as veteran teachers that that's not necessary. So I provide them with a concise lesson plan format that I let them customize on their own. I'm not expecting them to follow it to the letter. But one of the things that we know that college professors always recommend to new teachers is volunteer for everything. Sign up for everything. Well, my advice to them is completely the opposite. We know as veteran leaders and veteran teachers that oftentimes the microphone at the board meetings is full from parents that are athletics parents about coaches, or about how the drama teacher didn't use the right rubric to assess the students, and why is my child not the lead role in the play, or why is it that the honor society didn't select my child for the opportunity to be part of that, and the criteria that's involved, and then that teacher's name is associated with all of those negative comments at the Board of Education meeting, and they're untenured, right? So my advice to first year teachers in that very first meeting is manage your craft, become the best versions of yourself as a teacher, build relationships with your kids. And when you're building relationships with kids, you're going to have those daily wins, as Brandon Beck had shared. Making sure that, it's okay to take risks with kids, and it's okay to try your very, very best, and not to always volunteer for all of those extra things. Yeah, of course, if your building principal says, hey, we're doing an open school night, would you be willing to maybe put together a bulletin board or something like that? Yes, of course, do those things. But things that tend to be associated with stipends and or coaching pays, Stay away from your first year because it is the role to focus on your teaching. That is my biggest piece of advice for first year teachers is build relationships with kids, love your kids, and to take those risks and celebrate your daily wins, but try to stay away from all of the noise of, you need to be an advisor for this or you need to be the coach for that. Stay away from those particular things. Really, really important. That's my first piece of this particular segment here. Next, I'd like to kind of unpack the element that Lauren really talked about, which was the buffet, right? She talked about how veteran teachers are really like new teachers because the technology or the methods are always constantly changing, right? So we mentioned how we start at the buffet table and like education, you take all of the different elements onto your plate. And, at the end of the buffet table, it never fails. There's always that breakfast burrito or there's something that really excites you. And there's a piece of lasagna or something like you need to fit it on your plate and you just can't fit it. So what happens is we either overstuff our plates or we have to decide to remove things. And Lauren and I talked about how, oftentimes administrators or the state doesn't talk about removing things. And one of the things I was recently reflecting about is especially when you have a revolving door of administrators in your district, you've had things added, things added, things added, even as a veteran teacher, and you're going, what are we taking away, right? The thing that I think Lauren and I didn't quite get to in the conversation is, you walk to the table with this plate and you put the plate down. And if we pretend for a moment that all of the items on our plate are strategies for our students, right? Differentiation strategies. We want to be able to provide all of our students with those particular items, right? But then we want to be able to go back to the buffet table, right? So we may not want to fill our plate completely because that overdoes ourselves, it overcompletes ourselves. But every year we do still want access to that buffet table because the buffet table is the place where we've learned all of the things we've gained over the years. It's the tool belt of skills and strategies we've learned. And Ellen and I talked about, one of the big pieces as a new teacher is we want teachers to be able to manage their classroom, right? So they go to the buffet table to learn strategies or gain strategies. And what we talked about is the level of influence, right? Rather than talking about how to manage a classroom and how to have power in your classroom. Because new teachers will often say that, well, how do I control my class? I need to control my class. It's like, no, no, no. How do you influence your class? Because if we talk about the level of influence, we're talking about teachers being leaders. And like I'd say, teachers are leaders and leaders are teachers. So we really want to have students understand that they are part of the class, part of the rule development, part of all of those things. And then we go to the buffet table with all of the different strategies every single year to build those things up. And hopefully, as teachers and leaders, we are lifelong learners and we instill the love and passion for teaching to our students. Um, and it's really important that we maintain to be lifelong learners ourselves as educators and as leaders, that lifelong mindset, the growth mindset. And it's really important in my world to be that way. So it kind of talks about the buffet table that Lauren had shared. And I think it's really, really neat to think about that in the sense of, we don't want to overflow our plate, right? And we want to be able to give out the things or eat the things that we enjoy. But then also to be able to say, you know what, I finished this, or a student needs something different. And when the student needs something different, or you need something different, whether it's technology or it's a new strategy, a co-teaching model, you can go back to the buffet and get the things that you need, whether that's through professional development or it's through just your own skill development. I'm sure you have a file folder of things that you've used over the years that you can access and share with people or share with your students. So what we still want access to those particular things. All right, so let's move away from our buffet table, and I think it's really great that Lauren shared that analogy. I love it. And let's talk about a little bit of what Darren and I kind of talked about as the warning bell people, right? So I think this happens, primarily is in the world of leadership. So if you're a new leader, You may walk into your space and you have a person, a teacher, or even anybody in the building coming to you, and they unpack this big problem. And like Darrin had shared, he had somebody that unpacked this huge problem. He jumped at the opportunity to be the new leader to solve this problem, and he did all these changes, and then he learned that problem didn't exist. It really didn't exist. It only existed for that one person, right? So I think my piece is when you have a person coming to you, and this really isn't just the warning bell people. It's anybody, that's coming to you, and they're unpacking a challenge, they're unpacking a problem. I think one of the things that you have to think about is, investigate. Listen really carefully. We always talk about listen twice as much as you speak. I say we were born with two ears and one mouth. Jan Paul recently had talked about, we also listen with our eyes. So, listen four times as much as you speak because you want to listen to understand rather than to respond. And in doing that, you might want to say to the person that is that warning bell person, the person that's coming to you with a problem. And let me also share that a warning bell person may be in a classroom, right? So, for instance, if you recall back to your teaching as an experience, or even yourself as a student, I can remember it vividly as a student. You see you foresee a challenge or a problem, or you disagree with the assignment of a teacher, right? And you start talking to all your friends, and now you have a cohort or a group of 4 or 5 people that are all on the same page. You all disagree with whatever it might be, right? And then you finally found a spokesperson, right? And that spokesperson is going to talk to the teacher about this problem, right? That student could be your warning bell person, and your teacher that's coming to you could be your warning bell person. And Darrin and I talked about just be on the air of caution of these warning bell people, because they could pull you into something that isn't really a problem or isn't really the voice of the larger picture. So just be aware of that. That these people are the ones that are saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling, right? And just be aware that 9 times out of 10, sometimes the challenges that they are presenting aren't really the challenges that really exist. So I just wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit because I thought Darrin brought up a great point, and it ties into a lot of the things that we've talked about in the last couple of episodes. Um, so I'm going to move now to my own personal RW or rapid fire questions that I think are thematically linked to some of the work and things that we've done. So here's the question that was asked of me, through our rapid fire moments here, right? So one question here is, would you rather overload your plate once or go back for smaller portions all year round? I think if I were to answer that, I would say that if we're talking about differentiation, whether it's to students or differentiation of teaching strategies, we want to be able to not overload our plate. We want to be able to put the things on our plate that we need, go to the table, and either consume the things that we need for ourselves to be healthy, right? And or provide the things to the students or the people around us. So as a leader, we may give the mashed potatoes to one teacher, we may give the steak to another teacher. And if you are like me, when I go to a wedding with my wife, she gets a plate, I get a plate, and then we share that plate of the things that are from the buffet. Now, after our plates are empty, or in the realm of teaching, we see that another student needs something or another teacher needs something, we can go back to that buffet table. We can take the newer things or the different things that they might need to support them. Again, not overloading your plate because you as a leader, you as a teacher don't want to overwhelm yourself with all of the things that you need to do, but you need to have small portions of things so you can do things with fidelity and do things with clarity. I think that's my answer to that question. Number two is, what's your first response to a warning bell person? Do we listen? Do we delegate or investigate? Yes, I think all of those things. I think the number one thing, we listen to understand, listen to pay attention. There was a situation that happened this past week, and I shared it with my friend Dan Brazil, who I just recorded an episode with, how my secretary watched me struggle to not respond because I had to just listen to the person speaking. And it was really important after that would be to investigate. If the person is saying something and they feel that it's vitally important, you want them to understand that you are going to listen, you're going to respond, but you are going to do it with an investigation first. It's very similar to what I call the angry customer syndrome. As a leader or as a teacher, oftentimes you pick up the phone and you have a parent that is very upset about something. That parent just wants to understand that you are listening to them and you're understanding them and you're taking the time to take notes. So I usually will clarify and say, let me understand what you are saying. A strategy that I've been using recently is you listen to the concerns and you say, this is what I'm hearing from you, and reiterate what the challenges are, and then step into these are the steps I'm going to take to move forward. And then, of course, you're going to investigate, and then you're going to report back to that person. Even if it's a warning bell person and you're going to go back to them and say, look, I took your concerns very, very seriously. I spoke to this constituency of people, and this is the report back. And this is what I'm going to do next. Maybe you can help me with this. And that helps them to understand that you're not just placating them. So it's important to actually do something. All right. So best advice, number three, best advice for a first year teacher, smile before December. Oh, don't never smile before December. I'm sure we've all heard that advice, right? Never smile before December, right? No, no, no. We want our kids to know that we enjoy what we do. We want our kids to know that we love our students. Yes, we want to set up rules. Yes, we want to set up boundaries. But I think it's really, really important that we talk to the teachers about building relationships, taking the risks, as Brandon Beck had said, and building the law of influence and the rules of influence, as Ellen and I had spoken about, because it's super important that students know how much we love them and how much we enjoy working with them, right? So I did have a couple of questions from some of our listeners. So I want to kind of share out these questions and then I'll do my mic drop closer, if you will, right? So this is a question that was based on mentorship and vulnerability. So a listener had asked, as a district leader, how do you stay vulnerable and approachable without undermining your authority? It's a great question. And I think the important part is going back to the listening piece, right? We want to make sure that we listen carefully to the people in which we lead. A quote that I live by is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you want to make sure that you're kind, that people can maintain the dignity when they walk away. But you also want to understand people to understand that don't mistake kindness for weakness, right? So, there's a way in which you can put out expectations and say, here are the expectations. Here are what I would like for us to do. And then, of course, if somebody doesn't meet that expectation, the first time is you have a conversation with them politely and kindly and say, you didn't meet the expectation. How can I help you get there? And whatever it might be. And you maintain that approachableness, that vulnerability, just like Brené Brown talks about. We have to wear our hearts on our sleeve. There's been times that I've sat in department meetings and have teared up with things that have happened. I think it's important that our people see us as human beings. And of course, going back to that story, if the person that you have spoken to comes again and doesn't meet that expectation again, then you might have another conversation with a union rep present to kind of solidify and document the conversation. But again, doing it with dignity and respect and kindness. There's always a way to approach people with kindness rather than being unkind. Because if you're unkind, you will never be approachable. Working to be the person that listens, working to be the person that understands them as best as possible. All right, so here's another question from our listener. From a future leader perspective, this is for a person that's looking to be a leader. They said to me, you're a dad, you're a professor, you have written your blog, you have been a leader of the district. What's your number one time management hack? Wow, that's a important one, that you're not drowning in all the things. I'll tell you that I have so many people that say to me, Rob, how do you fit it all in? Do you ever sleep? And yeah, it is a challenge. All I can say is you have to learn to prioritize your time. I will share with you as being a father, a daddy of two girls, when my daughters were younger, my time was well spent helping them with homework, cooking dinner with them because I do all the cooking at home, spending time with Kim, my wife, making sure you have that downtime, sitting on the porch and having the conversations and unpacking your day, but also being able to balance out your time. The world of technology, you can access a lot of emails, a lot of conversations, a lot of things on your email, on your devices, and making sure that you have the time to breathe and take a moment, mindful moments. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to work with my friend Hillary Bromberg, and we ran a faculty meeting and we created glitter jars. I still have that glitter jar in my office, so if I need to take a moment, I'll take the glitter jar, I'll shake it, I'll put it on my desk, and I'll breathe in and I'll breathe out for the 45 seconds to 60 seconds to just to kind of refocus myself as a leader, as a person. Um, but yeah, it is a challenge to divvy out your time. You have to prioritize what you want to do. And to be honest with you, I just read something on a meme. It said like cancel your Netflix subscription and see how quickly your life changes. Think about all the moments that you may have that are seemingly a little bit wasteful, right? And think about those and think about how you can use that time differently. I think that's what I have done is I look at those moments and I say, well, how can I use my time differently, more efficiently? And I will, quickly move to writing myself a note to be able to draft something or to move something forward or ideas. Even in doing this episode, I was taking notes over the course of weeks to plan for this because it's really nerve-wracking to be able to sit in a room and have conversations with yourself and your listeners. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen, right? So my third question was from a teacher. They talk about the Mentoring Moments blog and the Mentoring Moments podcast. They ask about empowering our futures. What's the one thing a teacher can do tomorrow to mentor a future leader or future teacher? Okay, great. I think it's funny. It's reaching out, offering a lending hand. Um, you know, I was speaking with two new leaders yesterday or 2 days ago at school, and just having that time to sit to lend a hand and say, "Let me listen, let me share in our space," because at the end of the day, we all have commonalities, right? We all have common grounds where we can come to the table and work through a challenge, work through a compromise. In the realm of a parent, right, calling you with a concern, airing their concern, and you have your own side. There is a level of commonalities that we can find. So, what I say to this particular teacher that's asking this question is find a teacher, find a leader, find a student and reach out to them. Give a lending hand. How can I help you? How can I support you? The great question that I always love to ask as a leader is what does support from me look like? Right? That forces the person that you're speaking to visualize the support. And if they could speak out the visualization of that support to you, you know what you need to do as a teacher or as a leader to move them forward in their learning, in their leading, in their teaching. So my number one advice there is to offer a lending hand. Remember, we're here to support people. Be that servant leader, be that servant teacher. How can I help you mentality? And be humble about the approach. Because oftentimes we move through our spaces sometimes and we have our little wins and we celebrate our wins. But we always want to remember that I would jokingly say we're only as good as our last failure, right? So be positive, stay positive, and always reach out that lending hand. So here's my mic drop closer, right? So I would like to challenge all of you in the work that you're doing. And the mic drop that I have is who would I rather mentor? Going back to Darrin, mentor a zombie principal or a vampire board. I agree with Darrin. I would definitely want to mentor a zombie principal rather than touching a board member. Working through the politics of a board member can be really, really challenging. And I want to be clear that mentorship is super important to the work that we do, and it should be done every single day with people that we work with and that we love. So the mic drop closer is, my challenge to you is this week, right? I'm going to challenge you as a listener that you can respond back to me. When you have warning bells, right, and you listen to that noise that you might hear, go back to maybe the buffet table. Go back to the people that you trust. Go back to the administrators. Go back to the people that might be mentoring you, that listen. And hopefully they can give you that calming and soothing response or answers, right? And I want you to share with me, maybe using our hashtag RW mentoring moments hashtag to respond to this particular episode in how people are helping you and supporting you through the challenges that you face, maybe the warning bell people that you are listening to. I want to take a moment and again thank all of my listeners that have been downloading our episodes, been paying attention to the things that I've been saying with my leaders and my teachers that I've brought on as guests, and I hope to continue this once a month. And I hope you enjoyed this reflective moment with me, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Be well.